Be careful with the objects you bring into your home, because not everything carries only matter. Some things cross our doors bringing with them stories, intentions, and invisible marks. During my years as a priest, I learned that a home is not just a physical space, but a sensitive spiritual environment that absorbs whatever is introduced into it. Many people believe that spiritual problems begin with major rituals or extreme events, but the truth is that most of the time everything starts in a simple, almost innocent way. An object received as a gift, something bought out of curiosity, a souvenir brought from an unfamiliar place. First, nothing seems wrong. Silence remains, routine continues, and the house appears unchanged. But little by little, small changes begin to emerge. The atmosphere grows heavy, rest is no longer the same, and an unexplained feeling of being watched appears. And when that happens, almost no one connects it to what entered through the door days or weeks earlier. The story I am about to tell happened some time ago, but it remains alive in my memory as a constant warning. Throughout my years as a priest, I have witnessed many things out of the ordinary, situations that defy logic and test even those with the strongest faith. I have seen houses where peace disappeared for no apparent reason, families tormented by a fear they could not explain, and seemingly harmless objects become the center of disturbing events. The most frightening part is not what is seen, but what is felt. A sudden chill, an oppressive silence, a presence that does not reveal itself but makes itself known. And almost always, when I trace the story back to its beginning, there is one thing in common. Something was allowed into that home without discernment. What began as curiosity ended as a burden that was difficult to remove. That is why I share this account, not to provoke fear, but to warn. Not everything that appears ordinary is harmless, and some doors, once opened, require faith and courage to be closed again. I was in the church office that morning, organizing some papers and preparing for the usual appointments, when a woman appeared at the door looking visibly distressed. Her eyes revealed uneasiness, like someone carrying a weight too heavy to bear alone. She asked to speak with me privately, and by the tone of her voice I realized it was not something simple. I invited her to sit, trying to convey calm, and as was customary, I asked if she wished to confess. She immediately shook her head no and said, with a certain urgency, that the problem was not with her. That caught my attention. Usually, when someone seeks out a priest outside of mass hours, there is something personal involved. But in that case, she made it clear that she was there because of someone else, someone very close, whose situation had gone beyond what she considered normal. She then began to talk about her employer, a hardworking, practical woman who had never shown fear of spiritual matters or superstition. She said that her boss was going through serious problems at home, and that the situation had been getting worse each day. What caught my attention most was when she explained that the house was not only a residence, but also their workplace. They had set up a small business there, renting wedding dresses and formal wear for parties, a place that should have been associated with joy, celebrations, and new beginnings. However, according to her, ever since they moved into that house, something felt out of place. The move had happened recently, and at first everything seemed normal, but it did not take long for the atmosphere to begin changing in subtle and disturbing ways. Lowering her voice, almost as if she feared being heard, she began to describe the strange things that had been happening. She spoke of shadows appearing briefly in the corner of the eye and vanishing before anyone could be sure of what they had seen. She mentioned muffled voices, like whispers coming from empty rooms, especially at night when the house should have been completely silent. She also spoke of loud knocks on the doors, so forceful they sounded like someone trying to break in, yet whenever they checked, there was absolutely no one outside. These events were not isolated. According to her, they were becoming increasingly frequent, creating a constant atmosphere of tension, to the point that work no longer flowed and fear began to dominate their daily lives. As she spoke, I realized it was not just imagination or nervousness. There was consistency in her account, a sequence of events following a disturbing pattern. I asked whether anything unusual had been brought into the house after the move, or if they knew anything about the history of the place. She said that some belongings of the former owner had been left in one of the rooms, but they did not pay much attention to that. Their focus was simply on working and making the business prosper. It was then that I cautiously suggested she speak with her boss so we could schedule a visit. I explained that it would be important to see the environment in person, observe the house, sense the atmosphere, and hear the story directly from the person living through it every day. She agreed, visibly relieved to no longer be carrying that burden alone. As I watched her leave the office, I had the strange feeling that her request for help was only the beginning of something far more serious than she imagined. The next day, as agreed, I scheduled a time with the homeowner and went to the address she had given me. It was a large, old house, the kind that seems to hold more stories than it reveals at first glance. As soon as I arrived, she greeted me with a sense of urgency, as if she wanted to start talking immediately, perhaps afraid of being alone with what she was experiencing. Before we even went inside, she took a deep breath and said she needed to tell me everything exactly as it was happening, without leaving anything out. She explained that she always sought to rent large houses with many rooms, because a bridal shop requires space. Wide rooms, fitting areas, storage, mirrors, everything needed to fit without improvisation. On paper, that house seemed perfect. Large, well located, with a separate back area that would allow her to divide living space from work. She then began to talk about her personal life. She said she was divorced and the mother of 2 girls, one 10 years old and the other 9. The children lived in the back of the house, in an area she had adapted to keep some distance from the shop, while the front part and larger rooms were used exclusively for the business. According to her, the intention was always to protect her daughters from the constant movement of clients and employees. As we walked through the shop, passing racks of white dresses, delicate fabrics, and neatly arranged hangers, I began to feel something difficult to explain. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if each breath required more effort. It was not just physical discomfort. There was a clear sense of unease, as if something in that place did not want me there. She noticed my silence and asked if I was feeling it too. I did not answer immediately. I chose to let her continue. That was when she told me about the day she rented the house. She said that during the negotiation, the owner made a strange request. He asked if he could leave some objects in the house for a while, claiming he had nowhere to take them at that moment. He assured her they would stay in a corner and would not interfere with the shop's operation. They were rustic, old pieces of furniture, 2 large darkwood cabinets, a huge, heavy painting without a delicate frame, and a few other objects she could not clearly identify. At the time, it did not seem like a problem. She agreed, saying that when he found a place to take them, he could just let her know. Time passed, weeks turned into months, and the objects remained there, silently occupying the same space, as if they had always belonged to the house. As she spoke, I sensed that the environment around us seemed to react to the very memory of those objects. The house had a strange atmosphere, difficult to define. It was not just fear, but a constant sense of disturbance. She told me that nearly everyone who spent time there felt something similar. Employees avoided being alone, always finding excuses to work in pairs or leave early. Some clients joked that the place gave them chills, but never returned to finalize a rental. The children, she said, did not like crossing the shop area at night and claimed to hear noises coming from the rooms where the furniture was kept. That house seemed to drain the peace of anyone who stayed there too long. And the more she spoke, the clearer it became to me that the problem was not just the house itself, but what had been left inside it. She told me that during the day, the environment even seemed relatively calm. The movement of the shop, people coming and going, and natural light filling the rooms created a false sense of normality. But as soon as night fell, everything changed. When the doors were closed, the lights turned off, and silence took over, the atmosphere became heavy, almost oppressive. She said it felt as if the air grew colder and denser, and an inexplicable restlessness took hold of her. That was when fear appeared most strongly, especially because of her daughters. Since moving into that house, every single night without exception, the girls suffered heavy nosebleeds. It was not mild or occasional. It was intense and frightening, to the point that they woke up with their pillows stained with blood. Worried, she did everything any mother would do. She took her daughters to the doctor multiple times, went through tests, consultations, and detailed evaluations. They investigated possible health issues, allergies, climate changes, blood pressure, any logical explanation that could justify it. But the results always came back normal. No apparent cause, no diagnosis. The doctors said everything was fine, that there was nothing wrong with the girls. Even so, the bleeding continued night after night, always in that house. It began to consume her heart. As a mother, the feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. She knew something was wrong, but she could not explain what. That was when she began to pray more intensely. Many nights, kneeling beside the bed, she asked God why this was happening. She asked for answers, for protection, simply for her daughters to be well. And according to her, after so many prayers made with an anguished heart, something different happened. One night, God woke her suddenly in the early hours of the morning. It was not a noise, not an ordinary dream. It was as if something called her to wake at that exact moment. Her heart raced, and a strange feeling came over her even before she opened her eyes. When she got up and looked at the bed, she was faced with a scene she would never forget. The three of them slept together in a king-size bed, as a way to feel safer at night. But that morning, the girls were not lying down. They were standing on the bed, silent. Their eyes were open, but empty, as if they were not truly awake. Slowly, they began to move, walking on the mattress in a disoriented way. Then they started hitting their heads against the wall, repeatedly, with enough force to injure their faces. It did not look like a common episode of sleepwalking. She made it clear that her daughters had never been sleepwalkers. This was different, mechanical, unresponsive to the mother's voice calling out to them. Blood began to run down the girls' faces, dripping onto the sheets and pillows. After that, they simply lay down again, still bleeding, remaining that way for the rest of the night, as if nothing had happened. And she, frozen in place, understood in that moment that the problem in that house went far beyond anything that could be explained by reason. When morning came, she told her employees what had happened, and that was when each of them began to share a story they had personally witnessed in that house. She continued praying, asking God to reveal what it was, to show her the truth. There was a boy who used to come around, a child who lived almost like a homeless kid. He was very humble. Some days he slept on the street, other days he went home. His mother did not take care of him properly, and they lived in extreme need. Whenever he felt hungry, he would go there because she had taken him in a way. She would buy him snacks, give him lunch, and sometimes even let him take a shower there. This boy was about 10 years old. One day, he showed up when she was not there. Only one employee was present. The employee opened the metal gate at the stairway, since it was a two-story house and the gate was at the stairs, to let him in. And then something disturbing happened. The boy entered crawling like a snake on his back. He climbed the stairs backward, moving like a snake, as if he had legs on his back. When he reached the top, he turned and spoke to the employee, asking, "Where's Morma?" Her name was Rose. He never called her by her name. He always called her Morma. "Don't ask me why." The employee replied that she was not there. He then said, "All right, I'll come back later," and left. When she arrived later, the employee, completely desperate, told her what had happened, crying uncontrollably. It was obvious that the boy was possessed. She decided to wait for him to return so she could understand what had happened. The boy came back some days later. When she heard his voice, she was in the kitchen. She took off her shoes and began walking silently, trying to overhear his conversation with the employee, believing that if she stayed close, he would not do anything strange. But one room before she reached them, without making any noise, he suddenly turned and said, "Hi, Morma. I know you're there." She asked, "How do you know?" He answered, "He told me." She asked, "Who told you?" He did not answer. Then she said, "Can you walk the way you walked the day I wasn't here, so I can see?" He replied, "I won't." She asked, "Is the creature that made you walk like that not here today?" He answered, "Yes, it is. Look there in the painting." And then he ran away. He was referring to the painting the homeowner had left behind. After he left, she and the employee went over to the painting and began staring at it, The painting showed many flowers, tulips everywhere, like a field of tulips under a sky. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. She kept praying, asking God to reveal the truth. And after staring for a long time, they noticed something hidden among the tulips, very carefully concealed, painted in nearly the same color as the flowers so it would not stand out. There were small demonic faces hidden among the tulips. Many of them, if they had not prayed, God would not have revealed it, because it was extremely well camouflaged, like subliminal messages, painted in the same tones as the flowers and the surrounding scenery. The demons were very small, hidden in the artwork. It was clear that whoever painted the picture had done this intentionally. She did not know whether the homeowner was aware of it when he bought it, but regardless, there it was. She slowly led me to one of the least used rooms in the house, almost as if she avoided that space whenever possible. As we entered, my eyes were immediately drawn to an enormous painting, nearly the size of an entire wall. It was leaning there, dominating the room even without being hung. The frame was old and heavy, and the image seemed unusually dark, difficult to decipher at first glance. I asked her who the painting belonged to and why it was still there. With frustration mixed with fear in her voice, she explained that it belonged to the former owner of the house, the same one who had asked to leave some objects behind. She said they had tried contacting him many times, calling, sending messages, asking him to come get not only the painting but the other furniture as well. Nothing. No response. It was as if he had simply vanished, leaving everything behind. She then said firmly that it could not remain there any longer. That painting had to leave the house. As she spoke, I stood facing it for a few moments. The sensation was suffocating. The air felt heavier, the silence more oppressive, and a strange pressure filled the room, as if something invisible were reacting to my presence. It was not ordinary fear. It was a deep discomfort, impossible to ignore. I clearly sensed that the object was not merely decorative. It did not carry only paint and wood. There was something there that did not belong in that home, something that disturbed the peace and fueled the oppressive atmosphere. In that moment, I understood that the painting was the central point of everything that had been happening. Without touching it, I began to pray. I prayed with a firm voice, asking that every influence contrary to peace be broken, that the environment be purified, and that the house once again become a place of protection, especially for the children. During the prayer, the sensation did not disappear immediately, but there was a subtle shift, as if the weight were slowly beginning to lift. I blessed every room of the house and asked God to protect that family through the night and to remove from that place everything that did not come from Him. As I left, I told her they should continue praying, and that somehow that object would be removed. I could not explain how. I simply had the conviction that it would not remain there much longer. The very next day, something unexpected happened. Without warning, without any logical explanation, the owner of the painting appeared at the house. After weeks of complete silence, he simply showed up, saying he had come to retrieve the painting and the other objects. He did not apologize or offer any explanation. He just went in, removed the painting quickly, and left. As soon as the object was gone, the atmosphere in the house changed instantly. The air became lighter, the silence was no longer oppressive, and a sense of relief filled the place. No words were needed. Everyone felt it. That painting should never have remained in that house. And from that moment on, it became clear that sometimes evil does not manifest directly. It hides within seemingly harmless objects, waiting only for a place to stay. But a few weeks later, I received another call asking me to return to the house. The tone of her voice was no longer just concern. It was contained terror, like someone who had tried to endure something alone until reaching her limit. When I arrived, I immediately noticed that although the place looked normal, it once again carried a silent tension. We sat down, and she took a few moments before speaking, as if reliving it still deeply shook her. Then, in a low voice, she told me that one night she woke up with the clear sensation that one of her daughters was walking on top of the bed. It was not loud noise, but the subtle movement that a mother recognizes instantly, even in the dark. Without turning on the light, she reached out, grabbed the girl by the arm, and made her lie down again, assuming it was another strange episode like the previous ones. What disturbed her most was what happened next. Instead of looking at her daughter to make sure she was awake, something compelled her to turn her face to the other side of the bed. And at that moment, she saw it. It was not a shadow, not an undefined figure. She described it with terrifying clarity. A blonde woman with long hair, wearing a denim jacket, calmly walking through the room. There was no rush, no aggression, just a silent, confident presence. The woman crossed the room and walked straight into the wardrobe, as if that was where she belonged. She did not open doors or make noise. She simply entered and disappeared. The mother stood frozen, unable to scream, move, or even breathe properly. The children continued sleeping, unaware of everything. After telling me this, she took me to the bedroom where it had happened. The room was simple, but one thing immediately stood out. A large old wardrobe occupying almost an entire wall. I stood in front of it for a few moments and carefully asked whether that piece of furniture had also belonged to the former owner of the house. She said no. She explained that she had received the wardrobe as a gift from a client just a few weeks after moving into the house. At the time, it seemed like a simple gesture of gratitude, a chance to better furnish the girl's room. But upon hearing that, it became clear to me that once again, an object had been brought into that environment without discernment, just like the previous ones. And once again, something that seemed harmless had become a source of disturbance. Right there in that room, I began to pray. I prayed for protection, peace, and deliverance for that mother and her daughters. I blessed every corner of the room and asked that any presence that did not come from God be removed from that place. As I prayed, I felt that same silent resistance again, as if something refused to be confronted. When I finished, I spoke clearly and firmly to her. The best thing to do was to get rid of that wardrobe. Not donate it, not store it, not reuse it. Remove it completely from the house. She did not question it, perhaps because deep down she already knew. In the days that followed, she dismantled the wardrobe piece by piece and put it outside. After that, she said, the room changed. The silence was no longer oppressive. The nights became peaceful. And for the first time since moving in, she was able to sleep without fear of waking up and seeing something that should not be there. After that, peace was finally established in that house. It was not gradual or subtle, it was immediate, almost tangible. The atmosphere changed so clearly that there was no room for doubt. The nights became silent again. Not the heavy, suffocating silence, but a calm, restorative one. The girls completely stopped having nosebleeds. No more episodes. No more blood-stained pillows. No more fear at dawn. They slept through the night peacefully, the way children should. The mother, for the first time in a long while, was able to lie down without fear, without expecting to wake up in the middle of the night to face something she could not explain. The house, which once seemed to reject anyone inside it, became just a house again. The same happened in the workplace. The employees stopped seeing shadows, hearing voices, and feeling that constant sense of not being alone. No one avoided being alone in a room anymore. No one made excuses to leave early. The business began to flow, service improved, clients stayed longer, and, interestingly, comments about chills or discomfort never returned. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted from everyone. Looking back, it became clear that none of it was coincidence. Peace did not return because time passed, but because what did not belong there was removed. And that is why this account is not just a story, it is a warning. Be careful with everything you bring into your home. Not everything that enters through the door carries only usefulness or appearance. Some objects come with intentions, histories, and spiritual marks we cannot see, but can feel. Evil needs permission to act. It needs a foothold. It needs a body. And that body is often not a person, but a seemingly ordinary object left there without discernment. A piece of old furniture, a strange gift, something that came from an unknown place or person. So be vigilant, protect your home, because when a house is guarded, peace remains. And where true peace exists, evil finds no place to stay.